We're good. We're ready.
All right, thank you, Brendan. All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the February 9th, 2022 full board meeting of Manhattan Community Board 6. My name is Karla, and I am the chair of Manhattan Community Board 6. This meeting is being called to order at 7:03 p.m. Tonight, we are joined by Secretary Matt Bondi, District Manager Jesus Perez, Assistant District Manager Brendan Berth, and Community Associate Alexandra Crawford. Before we begin, in order to conduct an efficient meeting tonight, let's observe a few ground rules. First, no one may speak until granted the floor. CB6 members, if you have a question about board business or wish to make a motion, please first raise your hand through Zoom. As a reminder, the chat function should not be used for CB6 business or questions or conversations about agenda topics. Any and all such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. The chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information, such as an email address or a link, that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. When a member is given the floor to speak, I, as the chair, will first identify you, and then you can unmute yourself so that you can speak. We are required by New York State law to have a transcript of this meeting, so please keep all questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. And to the members of the public, if you wish to give remarks during the public session tonight and have not already registered by filling out the form on the CB6 website ahead of time, you can register to speak in the public session by using the Q&A feature of Zoom and posting your name, affiliation, and the specific topic you wish to speak about. This needs to be completed by 7:15 p.m. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office, was posted online, and appears on the screen before you. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda as stated. So board members, if you object to adopting the agenda, please raise your hand through Zoom.
Mr. Chair, someone has a comment in the chat. They said they submitted a question.
Thanks, Jim. Jesus in the board office will be supporting that.
All right.
Thank you for notifying me, though. Okay. Seeing no objections, the agenda is adopted. We'll now take attendance.
Thank you, Kyle. Kyle Thide.
Present.
Here. Asya Badi.
She's excused.
Okay, thank you. Neil Barkley.
Present.
Okay, great, thank you. Marty Barrett. Marty, are you here? Okay. Elvie Barroso.
Present.
Thank you. I am here. Claire Brennan.
I am here too.
Thank you. Jim Collins.
Here.
Stuart Desser.
Present.
Thank you. Michael Devereaux.
Present.
Daniel Devine.
Present.
Beatrice Disman.
Present.
Jeannie D'Onofrio is excused. Was Jeannie able to make it? Okay. Charles Fernandez.
Present.
Eric Goldberg.
Here.
Andrew Gross. Andrew. Okay, moving on. Adam Harkey. Adam. Okay. Molly Hollister.
Here.
Paige Judge,
Here, present.
John Keller,
Present.
Abigail Cruzmark,
Present.
Sandra Leftoff,
Here.
Anton Wallner,
Present.
Kavitha Matthew. Kavitha. Okay, Sandra McKee,
Present.
Richard Mintz,
Present.
Philip Napolitano. Philip. Okay, Rajesh Nayar. Rajesh. Okay, Kevin O'Keefe.
Present.
Thank you. Stephen O.
Here.
Reshma Patel.
Here.
Reshma? Okay,
Here.
thanks. Gotcha. Matt Roberts,
Present.
Gene Santoro,
Here.
Lawrence Shayer,
Present.
and Seligman,
Present.
Lou Sapersky,
Yo.
Seema Shah,
Present.
Sean Sherman. Sean. Okay, moving on to Sandro Sherrod,
Present.
Letty Simon. Letty?
He's unable to join us tonight.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Susan Steinberg,
Here.
Anju Suresh. Anju. Okay, Mark Thompson,
Here.
Corinne Vanderdonk. Corinne, I saw her earlier.
Present.
Okay, thank you. Brian Van Nieuwenhoven,
Present.
Maura Wong,
Present.
Ronnie White,
Present.
Claude Winfield.
Present.
Okay, and we have a quorum. Thank you all.
Martin Barrett, present.
Okay. I will mark you present, Marty. And we have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Matt. We'll now move on to the elected and agency representative reports. I've asked all of our elected officials to send over their reports ahead of time so that we can compile them. You can find all of the reports that were submitted on the CV6 website. The links to the report was disseminated ahead of time to all board members and the general public, and for your convenience can be found in the chat now. I will now call on each of the elected officials who have RSVP'd so that they can take questions from CV6 members and the public about their pre-submitted reports. Each elected official will have 1 minute to field questions. If there are no questions, we will move on to the next elected official on our list. If an elected official has a time-sensitive matter to report on that didn't make it into their pre-submitted report, they will have 3 minutes to do so. During this part of the meeting, we will also hear from government agency representatives who have requested to address the board tonight. So we will begin with Manhattan Borough President Mark Levine. Borough President, thank you for joining us tonight.
Hello, Mr. Chair. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Borough President, do you have a report or any words you'd like to say, or would you like to just field questions?
Sure. I'm still learning the format here in Series 6. We did submit a written report. I'm happy to field questions. I guess there is one late breaking piece of information, which is the governor's announcement today to lift the mask mandate in businesses which do not screen for vaccination. So in New York City, that means supermarkets, bodegas, pharmacies, laundromats, other types of stores. There's been a lot of confusion about this today. First, I want to remind folks that the mandate is still in place to wear a mask on mass transit, in hospitals, nursing homes, also in schools, in daycare, correctional facilities, homeless shelters. The announcement made today by the governor applies to the kinds of indoor stores and other businesses I mentioned. But I don't want people to be confused that the end of the mandate means that you should not wear a mask, because we're still seeing about 2,500 cases of COVID a day. in New York City, way down, thank God, from the astounding highs of January, but still, that's a lot of COVID. So still a time for caution. Again, this has come up since we filed our report. Just news today, I thought I'd mention. Otherwise, I'm happy to take questions if there are any.
All right, thank you, Borough President. Are there any questions for Manhattan Borough President Mark Levine? All right, seeing no questions, Borough President, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
All right, thanks, everyone. Have a good meeting.
Yeah. All right, next up, do we have Assemblymember Harvey Epstein? Or Joanna, are you on?
Hello, Kyle. How are you? Hello, everyone. Assemblymember Epstein will be joining at approximately 7:30, if that's okay. He will be on. Thank
All right.
you.
No problem. Thank you. Next up, we'll move on to William from Councilmember Menin's office.
Hi, everyone. I'm William Yee from Councilmember Menin. I don't recall if we submitted a report, but if we did not, I have remarks I can share briefly from the council member. So, traffic safety has been a top priority for the council member, for Councilmember Menin. The 19th precinct had the most traffic-related injuries reported in Manhattan. 435 were documented. And so as a result, especially in the devastating death that occurred on East 76th Street, the council member wrote a letter to Transportation Commissioner Rodriguez asking for a walkthrough in our neighborhood, which the commissioner agreed to. And on the list for this walkthrough is 57th and First Avenue, as our office is well aware of the collision that occurred there previously. Also, Councilmember Menin appeared on the Brian Lair WNYC show, and I would encourage everyone to check that out if they haven't seen it already. She talked about the district and her plans for her upcoming tenure. And then I guess the last thing I'll share is the town hall on anti-Semitism, which is actually taking place as we speak. If anyone is interested in that, I'm happy to share the link to that, even though it's happening right now. It started at 7:00 p.m. Via Zoom. It is hosted in conjunction with a lot of other law enforcement agencies, government officials, and elected offices. And she felt it was very important to have that conversation and talk about proposals, given the uptick, not only in our district, but in kind of New York City and the nation. So with that, I'll end my remarks and open to questions.
All right, thank you, William. And if you could send us the link to the board office to the recording of that town hall, we can share that.
Fantastic. Will do.
Are there any questions for Councilmember Menin's office? All right, seeing none. Thank you so much, William. All right, next up, we're joined by Councilmember Karla Rivera.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm really happy to be here. I know February is a busy month. It's Lunar New Year, it's Black History Month, and it's also when the council is now really getting started, holding more hearings, and our budget process is really underway. So we did submit a report, a few things just to cover. Every term we are appointed to different committees. So I serve on hospitals, COVID recovery and resiliency, standards and ethics, housing and buildings, and land use. And I chair the council's criminal justice committee that oversees the Department of Corrections and Probation. And so today I was with my committee members on Rikers Island discussing some of the issues that are clearly unfolding on that island that are affecting the detainees, the incarcerated, and of course, the Department of Corrections staff alike. We also included in our report some of the work that we're doing around COVID. We have been at multiple schools and multiple locations throughout the district, making sure that people had test kits. I know that some of you have inquired as to request them from the federal government. So we went ahead and helped a few of you out kind of navigate that system. But if there's anything you should ever need to make yourself feel safer, of course, throughout this pandemic, I know many of you have reached out, please don't hesitate. We've certainly brought masks to PS 116, to some businesses in the area. And so we're working hard in the council to make sure that, this is a just recovery. Other things that we included the tax lien sale, which for those of you that don't know what the tax lien sale is, it allows private corporations to purchase homeowners' unpaid property tax and water bill debts for about 70 cents on the dollar. And then the companies can then set fees and high interest rates as they aggressively seek the full total from homeowners who could actually lose their homes if they don't pay. So I'll be at a rally in East New York on Saturday with advocates who feel that we can come up with a much better alternative, considering how much money this actually brings the city versus how much is lost in terms of assets for people who are actually a very, very moderate means. And another thing that I included in the report was about a package of bills that really were to help support our delivery workers. A lot of people call them deliveristas. A few bills to make sure that they had adequate equipment, that they weren't traveling at lengthy distances that actually create a very unsafe situation for the cyclists as well as pedestrians and other people in the city. And many of those took effect a couple weeks ago. And so we're looking at how we can make sure our streets are safer, not just cyclists, but for pedestrians also, and make sure that no worker is being exploited in our city. I think with that, maybe I'll take a couple questions. I hope that wasn't too long.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much, Council Member. Are there any questions for Council Member Rivera? All right. It seems like it was a great report. No questions for you.
Nailed it. Okay. If anyone needs anything, please don't hesitate to let our office know. I know CB6 is not shy. So something really quick in the chat. Absolutely. Advocates are people from the community, and then people, of course, in the outer boroughs that are very affected from the tax lien sale. But I always make sure that when I'm exploring any legislation or backing any policy topic, that not only do I speak to citywide advocates, but I talk to people, of course, in our very own district. So when it comes to things like the Property Tax Commission and some of the unjust burdens I think that our district faces, I make sure that I especially look to you all. So thank you. Please let me know if you have any other questions. You can contact our office, 212-677-1077. You can always DM me on social media. And I appreciate you all very, very much. Have a great day, a great night, and a great meeting.
All right, thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, next up, we have Senator Hoyleman.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Council Member. State Senator Brad Hoyleman here. Brief report. I know that's how you like to do it here. We are in the middle of our budget hearings up in Albany, the governor's $216 billion state budget, your taxpayer dollars at work. Throughout that process, we get to have various commissioners, superintendents, and other officials to ask questions of them. Today, Mayor Adams was virtually in Albany for his first appearance. I was able to ask him about the issue involving the Penn Station redevelopment, which is a big deal because it's going to bring 18 million square feet of new commercial office space to Midtown Manhattan and possibly cost the city up to $400 million a year in lost revenue through a pilots program. The state would basically capture all the revenue from the new development and use it in part to pay for a new Penn Station, which we desperately need. But I asked the mayor, have you considered how much money the city is going to be losing in revenue? And I also asked him, wouldn't that be an amazing location for more affordable and supportive housing? Since you have 5.5 city blocks there, this would be an opportunity, I think, of a generation to build affordable housing, which is something he emphasized in his remarks. And he agreed heartily to both of those. So I look forward to having conversations further with him. Secondly, I did want to mention that the representatives from the Department of Environmental Conservation were there, including the person who heads up NYSERDA, which is the Clean Energy Fund for the state of New York. Believe it or not, the Clean Energy Fund for the state of New York had given the owner of Stuytown, Peter Cooper Village, over $1 million for a clean energy grant to build a fossil fuel plant. So I was able to ask the commissioner about the wisdom of such a grant, and also whether we could claw that grant back and what we could do to make sure that DEC has a role in the siting of these kinds of plants. They do now, but the applicant apparently has lowered the estimated amount of particulate matter so that DEC no longer has authority over the planned combined heat and power plant at Stuytown, which is outrageous, and which I'm going to fight tooth and nail with hopefully legislation that changes that, and working with DEC. And I got their commitment in that regard. And then finally, speaking of transit, as I did earlier in my remarks, I sent a letter along with my colleagues in the area, including Senator Jackson, Robert Jackson, who represents the neighborhood over near the New Moynihan station, to ask Amtrak and the MTA, hey guys, can you put some more seats in the train hall? And hopefully we can get a response and have places to sit there. Happy to take questions. Otherwise, have a good evening.
Great, thank you, Senator Hoyleman. Are there any questions for Senator Hoyleman? All right, seeing none, thank you so much, Senator. Appreciate it.
Good to see everyone.
You're doing up in Albany.
Thank you.
Yeah. Next up, we have Madeline from Senator Kruger's office.
Hello, happy to answer
Technical issue.
Yeah, Madeline, we're having a technical issue. Can you hear us? Okay, let's move on, and can someone from the board staff just work with Madeline to see what her issue is? But in the meantime, we'll move on to Assemblymember Gottfried's office. Priest?
Hi, good evening. Thank you very much. It's been a busy month for him, but I don't have a lot to report. He did help co-chair the health budget hearings yesterday on the healthcare portion of the New York State budget, which is a huge percent, close to about 40% of the state budget as relates to healthcare. And those went on all day and into the evening. Senator Kruger co-chaired those hearings. He is focusing a lot. Obviously, it's his final session in his 52-year career. One of his focuses is going to be fair pay for home care. Very pleased. It's great that the Governor Hochul has included a one-shot bonus for healthcare workers that might include home care workers, but we need a more durable, enduring solution. I put forward a link to that bill in the chat, and I'm sending through my contact information a second time. That's really about it. He's got many, many issues. On a sort of more of a note of relevance to CB6 than to Assemblymember Gottfried, the new district lines, which did come out and have been signed by the governor, although they're subject to a legal challenge in the courts by the Republican Party, among other parties, perhaps. I'm not up to date on that. The district currently represented by Assemblymember Gottfried, the 75th, will no longer include any part of Community Board 6. So I haven't looked at where the other assembly districts are, but I know you're hard by the river, and none of the districts, the assembly districts around here cross the river. So it's likely it'll be at least one less elected official to have to handle in your board meetings, and that may shave a couple of minutes off. But we'll be here all year long. We are good until the meter runs out, and that's about it. If anyone needs to contact the office on locations in the district that are in Board 6, please do so. The contact info is there. Thank you and good night.
All right, thank you, Brees. It is an end of an era in many ways, so thank you.
Not yet, but
Yeah, not yet, but soon.
probably if it sticks in court. Yeah,
Sure.
probably.
So are there any questions for Assemblymember Godfrey's office? Any questions for Brees? All right, seeing none, thank you very much. All right, next up, we have Alex from Assemblymember Court's office.
Hi, everyone. Assemblymember Court's Deputy Chief of Staff, Alex Wolin. I don't have anything to add to our report, but happy to drop my email in the chat and take any questions.
Awesome, thank you, Alex. I see we have a question from Anne. Anne, go ahead.
Yeah, I was sort of interested that Dan mentioned the new redistricting maps in his report. And I think that's great. It's something we should all be aware of. I have to say, they were incredibly confusing. When I checked them out, they were incredibly confusing and inaccurate. So like it showed my address. I was in Jose Serrano's district. Like, no, I really don't think so. So if you can, if there's anything that you guys can do to just like kind of do some ground truthing on that, and if you can do a little pushback, I know the commission is basically wrapped up, but still that like those maps need to work. People need to know where to go and vote and who they're, what districts they're in.
Right. I think there is a website where the most, I believe, recent maps are online. I know that the Assembly Members District hasn't really changed all that much, but I'm happy to connect with you and talk about it further.
Yeah, I actually, I mean, I had gone to like the redistricting commission's website. Like that's, so anyway, but you guys might want to just check it out because it sounds like it's a priority for him. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much. I will look into that and I will connect with you.
And if anybody else has checked it out and I'm like just reading it wrong, please let me know.
All right, thank you, Anne. Are there any further questions for Assemblymember Court's office or Alex? All right, seeing none. Thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And if you could put your contact information in the chat, that would be great. Thank you.
You got it.
All right, next up, we have Pat from Councilmember Power's office.
Good evening, everyone. I don't have anything additional to add on top of our report that we submitted, but if there's any questions, I'm here to take them. And I apologize in advance. My voice is a little raspy. I'm feeling a little under the weather, so my apologies.
No worries. Thank you, Pat. Are there any questions for Councilmember Power's office? All right, seeing none.
There's Anne has a question.
Oh, sorry, there, I just saw it. Anne, go ahead.
Yeah, I have the same question I'm going to have like every month until I get another answer, which is if we have any greater information about the status of the Grand Central Library and whether for sure it's closing and if there's anything we can do to stop that from happening.
Yeah, I know that the council member has inquired with some folks outside after he spoke with you guys last meeting. I know that he inquired with some folks to see if there was anything that we could do to push to try and save that branch. I can double check with him to see if he's had any updates. I don't have anything to share right now, but I can definitely look into that and get back to you.
That would be great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you, Anne. Any further questions for Councilmember Power's office? All right, seeing none. Thank you very much, Pat, and feel better.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next up, we have Lingjun Chen from District Attorney Bragg's office.
Hi, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Lingjun Chen from Manhattan DA's office. Just want to quickly mention that our office has launched 3 programs recently for students. One is our high school internship program. It's open to all high school students who live or attend school in Manhattan. The deadline is March 4th. And the second is Gun Violence Prevention Fellowship. It's all open to college and high school students. The third is called Teen Dating Violence Presentation. It's open to all students and community members who have concerns. So I will share all this information in the chat as well as my contact info. And also we are still working on having an executive member to join the Public Safety Committee meeting. Thank CB6 for the patience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lingjun. Are there any questions for the District Attorney's Office? All right, seeing none, thank you very much, Lingjun.
Thank you.
And I see that we're now joined by Assemblymember Harvey Epstein. Assemblymember, you there?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Yeah, so, I was just going to briefly just mention the redistricting, and if people have issues with the maps, I'm happy to talk about it. My district did change fairly substantially, but not in the CB6 area and the CB3 area. But I'm happy to continue to, people have questions or feel like the maps aren't really clear. I'm happy to help people understand them more and work with people to make sure that they, the LAFR, if the things were wrong with the LAFR website, I know there were some really problems right away, and we got a lot of that fixed. So if people are still having problems with LAFR's website, they can just reach out to Joanna from my team who's here, and I'm happy to take any other questions that people have. Most of the information is really in our report that we submitted.
All right, thank you,
Kyle.
Assemblymember. Are there any questions for the Assemblymember from the board or from the public? All right, not seeing any questions, Assemblymember.
Thank you very much. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you. You as well. All right, and Joanna, if you could just put your information again. I know you put it in earlier, but if you could just put it in again for people.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Taylor from Congress Member Maloney's office.
Hi, I don't have any updates from our report. One of the positive sides of taking a while to get it in. So any questions, here to answer.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions for Representative Maloney's office? All right, seeing none, Taylor, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And next up, we have Madeline from Senator Kruger's office. Have we fixed the tech issue?
Hello, I'm back with a better connection. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Senator Kruger's in Albany hosting state budget hearings, and we submitted a report, but if anyone has questions, feel free to let me know.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for Senator Kruger's office? All right, seeing none, thank you so much, Madeline. And I believe that's all we have for the RSVPs for electeds. Jesus, Brendan, did we have any other electeds who joined after?
I do still Ellison from the Public Advocate's office is raising his hand.
Yes, go ahead.
Good afternoon. I just want to highlight, there are a number of different initiatives and comments in the media from the Public Advocate in our office. I want to highlight two, and one that's not in there very briefly, but one of them to take a look at the recommendations to combat gun violence, given all throughout Manhattan. That's something that people have been concerned about. And the Public Advocate has released city, state, and federal recommendations to combat gun violence, the rise in gun violence, particularly given his years that he was the chair of the council's task force to combat gun violence, and bringing his reimagining public safety and combining that and looking at all levels of government, concrete legislative, that's the state, local, and federal initiatives or legislative solutions. So I also highlight that. And this week, the Public Advocate also released the recommendations around reforming the inefficient repair process for NYCHA. That is he's doing a tour. He had a press conference and tour of NYCHA apartment buildings, coming off the heels of the worst landlords watch list, which is a staple from our office that is very impactful. And this is really important to take a look at that to see ways that the repair process and accountability can be improved. And so I want to highlight those two things. And lastly, I just saying giving an example of how to potentially work with our office. I know CB6 wants to have the racial impact study conversation. So I'm working on making sure we can bring that to the table for you, as well as CB5 we have made sure that the public advocate testified on the Penn Station redevelopment project and how that process has taken place and the implications for the city that we're really concerned about in regarding displacement and cost in a way that is equitable and thoughtful. And so that is a way that if there are issues that to also support CB6 on like that. So thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you very much, Philip. And if you could put your contact information in the chat in case anyone has any follow-up questions, we'd appreciate that. Are there any questions for the Public Advocate's Office from the board or from the public? All right, seeing none. Thank you very much, Philip. Appreciate it. All right, so I don't see any other electeds up on the list. So we'll now move to the public session. Jesus, has anyone signed up to speak in the public session?
Yes, we do have some folks signed up. First on the list is Prince Oba, who is a resident of this district and wishes to speak on food waste and strategies to deal with growing food insecurity. I, however, don't see Prince. Are you here? Perhaps not. All right, so we'll move on to the next speaker who has registered, Mr. David Zellman, who is a resident of our district and wishes to speak on the topic of outdoor dining sheds. And, oh, well, it looks like Mr. Zellman is not here either. All right, then. So we'll move on down the list. We've got Felicia, I'm not sorry, it says Elaine Davis, who is a resident of another district, but wishes to address CB6 on the topic of children living in congregate care. So Ms. Elaine Davis, you have 3 minutes. You may begin your remarks.
Well, my remark is more or less a question to the community board. I just wanted to know, what are the safety measures that are in place to protect the population of children that are living in congregate care from the risk of being sex trafficked?
Did we lose Miss Elaine?
No, she stopped her
No,
remark.
she just had one question.
Okay.
I guess
I just had that one question.
it's probably a matter for public safety.
So Ms. Elaine Davis, we don't answer questions during the public session. This is an opportunity for you to make a statement on an issue. But if you'd like to connect with our public safety committee, we'll be hearing a report later today, and you can attend that meeting and discuss this at hand. Or you can connect with one of the elected officials who is up here tonight. Their information is in the chat.
Okay, great. How do I contact public safety?
Just reach out to the board office. I'll have one of our staff members send you the office email, and you can be connected that way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And do you have a question? And you're on mute.
Is it public safety, right? Or is it housing and homelessness? Since you're like, I'm just throwing that out there as a.
It could be a number of things, but if we can get more information in the email, we'll connect you to the appropriate resource.
Yeah, I would say like, yeah.
All right.
And there was another person who signed up. It was actually a member of this board. It's a good opportunity to remind the board that section 7.3D of the bylaws states that a member of the board or a public member of the board cannot be recognized as a speaker in public session if they are speaking on an agenda topic during the business session. So that's just a helpful reminder. But with that, the speakers list is concluded.
All right. Thank you, Jesus. So we'll move on to the adoption of the previous meeting's full board minutes. The minutes from the January 12th full board meeting were distributed to board members ahead of time by the board office. If there is no objection, we will adopt the minutes from that meeting. So board members, if you object to adopting the minutes, please raise your hand through Zoom. Seeing no objections, the minutes from the January 12th full board meeting are adopted. They will soon be available on the CB6 website. I'll now deliver the chair's report. It's a very quick report. The first and foremost thing is I want to remind everybody that this Saturday, February 12th at 11 a.m., we will be leading a virtual memorial service for Rick Eggers, our former chair and dear colleague and friend who passed away earlier this year. So please RSVP for that. Please share it with friends in the community. And I also want to give a special thanks to Anne and B and Mark and Sandro, who really took the lead on organizing this. So I hope to see everybody this weekend. And again, please RSVP and share to the network. Next, I also want to remind everybody that I emailed everybody the new template for the meeting cover sheet. So we should be using this for all of our meetings going forth. If anyone has any questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to your chairs or to me directly, and I can answer any questions on that. But please make sure that you're using that going forth. And that's all I have for the chair's report. So we'll now hear from our district manager.
Thank you, Kyle. I'll waive my report tonight.
All right, thank you. We'll now hear from our board treasurer, Brian Van Nieuwenhoven, who will give a report.
Good evening, everyone. I am loading the report because that really took me quite by surprise. Okay. So our budget summary report for February 1st, reflecting activity for the month of January, shows that our personal services budget for the year is $237,033. We have a balance of $112,173 with $124,859 spent or obligated. Our current budget for other than personal services excluding rent is $161,901. This figure contains $119,646 of our retained street fair funds. Our remaining OTPS budget, excluding the street fair funds, is $42,255. We have a balance of $37,762 with $4,492 spent or obligated for the fiscal year, keeping in mind that our fiscal year ends on June 30th. So we've done really well with our OTPS budget. Finally, our rent budget for the year is $163,642, and it has already been dispersed to the landlord of our office to pay our rent obligations for the year. Does anyone have any questions? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Brian. All right, so we'll now go to our committee reports and resolutions. In order to conduct an efficient meeting tonight, again, let's observe a few ground rules. First, no one may speak until granted the floor. Board members, if you have any questions or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom first. The chat function, again, should not be used for board business or questions about agenda topics. Any and all such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. The chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you're having or to state in writing information such as an email address or link that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. Next, I must first identify you as the chair before you are given the floor to speak. To the members of the public, please note that during this session of the meeting, we only take questions from members of the board. And last but not least, we are required by New York State law to have a transcript of this meeting. So please keep all questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. So tonight we are again using a digital ballot. The CB6 staff will post a link to the ballot in the chat. Please open this ballot, select your name from the list of board members, and select your vote on each resolution as it is presented. Do not hit submit until later in the meeting after the final resolution has been presented. At the end of the meeting, once you have indicated all of your votes on the ballot, only then should you submit the ballot. You will not be able to submit the ballot unless you vote on every resolution. If you plan on abstaining, please select abstain. Final vote counts will be announced after the second roll call, so please stick around for that. And if any part of our voting procedure is unclear, please raise your hand through Zoom and we will address your question. So the link to the ballots should be in the chat. Please click on it or copy and paste it into your browser. And we will begin with the Transportation Committee. So Gene, go ahead.
Thank you, Kyle. Okay, first, let me just take a second to mention my good friend, Rick Eggers, who was, since I wasn't here last month, just to add my 1 second or 2 seconds worth of stuff. Rick was a great mentor to me when I first joined the board and continued to be throughout his entire time and my time on it. And we became very good friends. And so I will be participating in the event this weekend to speak with the rest of you about him and share memories of a terrific guy who was not only a stickler for process and knew it inside out, but had a remarkably cutting, sarcastic sense of humor that was so much fun that it made enjoying his company even better than it would have been otherwise. And more to come. Okay, as far as the committee goes, we have one reso up. It's really simple and straightforward. It involves a single bus stop with a single bus line picking up where a previous bus line was using that stop for half a dozen pickups in a day. I think it's straightforward. I don't think there's any explanation needed, but if anybody's got any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
All right, thank you, Gene. Are there any questions on 1A? I see a hand. B.
I wanted to move the question.
All right, there's a call to question. Is that seconded?
Second.
Who was that?
Sorry.
Is that it?
Second.
All right, seconded by Ann. All right, so we'll now go back to our digital ballots. And please mark your vote for 1A. And do not hit submit. And to those of you who are not using the digital ballot, we will ask for your vote verbally during the second roll call. And Gene, do you have a report while people are doing their vote?
I do. One of the big chunks is DOT. DOT is pushing back timelines on its projects all around New York City. Since we're the Transportation Committee, that has something of an effect on a lot of the things we do. So for example, you may remember we passed a resolution in favor of separating the bike and pedestrian lanes on the 59th Street Bridge. That was supposed to happen sometime this year. It will not be happening this year. It might be happening next year. Other things have fallen by the wayside as well. Our 3rd Avenue project has gotten caught up in that a bit. Also because DOT has decided that they want to extend it up to 34th Street, where, as anybody who lives in this territory knows, there's massive amounts of construction. So until that's done, nothing much is going to happen there either. There are a couple other things like that, including on a smaller scale, the NYU Langone proposal to move the bus stop that's roughly at 31st Street in front of their building up, because they have to do a lot of reconstruction of the front end of that building at 551st. We were going to have them in for a presentation this month. They couldn't come because they and DOT couldn't get together. One of the issues was about the transfer of money from FEMA to DOT by way of NYU. Don't ask me why. I stayed out of it because it's sort of ridiculous. But in any case, they will be showing up in March. With hopefully a robust presentation. I've asked them to bring plenty of visuals. I've asked them to bring a lot of information. I've told them the committee is going to be really concerned about this. So hopefully we'll get a fuller and more robust presentation than we often do from them. We'll see what happens with that. On more positive news, the 43rd Street shared street that we put into place a couple of years ago has left very few people entirely happy with it. So it was good news that DOT has presented to the East Midtown Governing Group about upgrading that situation. They're supposed to come in March as well to show us what that's about, in which case we will discuss it and vote on it, and hopefully move forward on an improvement in that area, which ties into our discussions of pedestrianizing more of the Grand Central Terminal area, which I've slowed down a bit precisely because this was happening. And there's no point in getting ahead of DOT when they're doing something. We'll wait until we see what they've got. And also, we have time because all the projects are being pushed back anyway. So as long as we get this thing together and vision sometime by the spring, we'll be in the queue for whenever DOT starts to ramp up business again back to normal. Okay. And lastly, since we have these kind of things going on, one of the things we've decided to do is some internal housekeeping. And one of those things is street co-namings. We've had an effective moratorium on them for the last year and a half, 2 years. I forget exactly how long. But there are things starting to come up now, including the thing about Rick, that require us to either decide to make the moratorium, to extend the moratorium and extend it formally by way of resolution, or to set up more fuller, less sort of sketchy process than the one we had, which got us into trouble a couple of times where we had to take back resolutions that were imperfectly researched, let's say. So we're working on that now. We have a task force, Brian and Anna on it. There may be one or two other members joining it. I wrote a long, detailed resolution that drew from various community boards around Manhattan, half of whom have moratoria on street code namings, the other of whom have much more stringent sort of commitments on the applicants' parts. And from near in Brooklyn, which are the districts that are the most like us. So we'll be looking at that over the next month or so and probably have that resolution prepared by April. That's the target anyway. And I think that's really the gist of it for now. Any questions?
All right, thank you very much, Gene. Are there any questions for Gene and the Transportation Committee? All right, seeing none. Thank you very much, Gene.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. We'll now move on to the Housing and Homelessness Committee. Rich?
Yes, thank you. So we have one resolution this month. You may recall that one of the issues that we took up in our last meeting was the new stabilization bed facility that DHS has established at 161 Lexington in a former or in an empty hotel. This was a facility that had a density reduction shelter in it, which was a program that was discontinued. The former operator pulled out. Our board was under the impression that that would be the end of occupancy of that site. And then we were notified in December that DHS had made an agreement with another party to open a stabilization bed facility there, which kind of caught us flat-footed since we had been telling the community that operations were ceasing at that location because that was the information that we had. Obviously, our board is on record as supporting stabilization bed facilities, but we don't like being put in a position where we are not fully apprised of what's happening. And so this resolution, which passed the committee last month, would urge the city to formally notify us before negotiations are final when a new social service facility like stabilization bed facility is going to be opened in our district, so that we have adequate time for public communication and notice and for people to ask questions before the facility opens. That's the substance of the resolution. Are there any questions or comment?
All right, thank you, Rich. Are there any questions on 2A? And if there are no questions, is there a call to question? Sandy?
I'll call to question, please. Call
Thank
to
you.
question.
Is that seconded, B?
I second it.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry, I couldn't get my hand up in time. I have a question.
Is that one? Yeah, Anton, go ahead.
Anton, yeah. I see that it appears that DHS, as you say here, consistently failed to provide adequate advance notice. Where's the teeth in this resolution to get them off center spot, move to let us know what's going on? It appears that they're just not cooperative.
I mean, I just speaking frankly, I don't, given that we only have an advisory responsibility, and that is only informal. I'm not sure we have any teeth. I would defer to the chair if he has another response to that.
Yeah, well, I'll just say, well, first of all, we don't have a say in this process at all of the siting of shelters or any of these social services. So the idea is not to discuss anything about the process itself, but to receive information ahead of time, because as you're discussing, this has been a lack of cooperation and communication, not just with the community board, with the community as a whole, which is why we've seen a lot of confusion and other feelings from the communities in situations like this. So many might remember the issue that we dealt with in 2020 when this first came up with another shelter siting in the district. We had sent out an official letter, so this is just officializing that through a resolution. All right, and since it was called to question and seconded by B, I'm not going to take any other questions on this, so let's go to take a vote on this. So please go to your digital ballot and mark your vote for 2A and do not hit submit just yet. And to those of you who are not using the digital ballot, we will ask for your vote verbally during the second roll call. And Rich, do you want to deliver a report while people are doing that?
I'm going to waive my report tonight. I have nothing substantive to cover.
All right, thank you very much, Rich.
Can I just comment with respect to the debate? Anton indicated that he wanted to raise his hand earlier and was unable to. And he raised the issue of what kind of teeth this resolution had. And I would agree with him that there is none. One of the commentators, public commentators, some couple of meetings back had suggested that we propose to our legislators that they adopt something akin to the liquor license law with respect to these, with respect to shelters and supportive housing, so that the community can weigh in and have a substantial contribution to ensure that the operators are appropriate and are handling their responsibilities appropriately. And I think that's a reasonable discussion, and I think one that perhaps Housing and Homeless should take up in their next meeting or at some point.
So that, yeah, so I was obviously on that meeting as well, and it was a little bit different because they were actually proposing that to their elected officials. Because as it currently stands, we obviously don't have a say in that. So as I have said personally to a lot of these people in the community, and Rich has said as well, and we said on that meeting, if there is a proposal from our elected officials, we will of course review that. That is a separate topic from what this particular resolution is. So if that's something that you want to bring to the committee separately, I encourage you to connect with Rich or the elected officials who were on that call, who were the recipients of that particular proposal. But thank you, Jim. Appreciate that.
And Jim, I'm happy to follow up with you after.
Thank you.
All right, so seeing no further questions, we'll move on to youth and education. John, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll be brief. At our last meeting, we had a very interesting discussion on a topic that was not very familiar to me. That is funding parity for state-approved special education schools. We had the principal of one of those schools, Duncan Lester, of the Reese School present, and we are drafting a resolution to bring to the full board at our next meeting. And secondly, I'm very excited to announce that at our next committee meeting on February 22nd, we're going to have a panel discussion on the delivery and quality of food to children in New York City public schools. And here I want to be very, very grateful to District 2 Superintendent Kelly McGuire, who helped us put together a panel that includes the Director of Menu Management for the DOE, Nicole Scarangelo, and the School Food Supervisor for District 2, Lauren Kearley, and her staff. So we're publicizing this meeting both through the CV6 webpage, newsletter, and the Community Education Council for District 2 is publicizing it as well across its network. And we really hope to have a robust discussion of a topic that has been in the news regarding, and one thing that all people could agree on in education in the city today is the quality of food that is served to our kids, on a daily basis. So we're looking forward to a good discussion there. Thank you. That concludes my report.
All right, thank you, John. Are there any questions for the Youth and Education Committee? All right, seeing none, thank you very much, John. We'll now move on to Environment and Parks. Kevin, go ahead.
Thank you, Kyle. We present a resolution for continuation of last year's successful open street program on East 36th Street. The goal is to make this open street permanent. And in addition to our request to the Department of Transportation to reapprove this open street, the resolution also addresses a solution to a longtime Parks Department parking predicament. If this resolution is implemented by the DOT, the Parks Department will no longer need to park its vehicles on walkways inside the adjacent park or on the open street. Two current realities about which many community leaders, including the parent leaders at PS 116 and PS 281, have long expressed their displeasure. Now, the Parks Department, I should add, had representation at the committee meeting and expressed its full support of this resolution, including the park solution. Happy to answer any questions, and I believe Jim Collins has one.
I believe in the ballot it's showing 36th Street, but I thought
that's correct that I did. If 36 is what I meant to say,
okay.
If I said anything else, it should have been 36th Street. Correct.
Okay, because and I've walked that area any number of times, but my recollection is you have 34th and then you have 35th, and Tunnel Exit Street goes from 34th to 35th Street and then goes into the tunnel. So I don't know how we get to 36th Street.
It actually 36 goes across from 2nd to 1st and is intersected by the tunnel approach street. St. Martin Park, which is the adjacent park that I mentioned.
So this is north of St. Martin Park.
Correct.
Okay, that's fine.
That's
fine. That's fine. Okay.
All right, thank you, Jim. I see Michael has his hand up. Michael, go ahead.
Hey, thanks, Kevin. I just have a question about, I know that's basically if you make a left on the 36th Street and you don't want to go into the tunnel, that's a way to kind of not go into Queens, and coming down 36th Street, you could bear right, not go into the tunnel. Now, with that being closed, people will not have a choice. They'll have to go into the tunnel. Will there be new signage to make it very clear that it's just a tunnel approach?
We didn't have any problem thank you. It's a great question. I was one of the barricade bouncers, if you will, for many sessions last year. We didn't have any issues whatsoever. What we did was, if anybody didn't read the signs that were multiple in number, we just had them turn around. And this is with approval of the MTA officers who were there. They turned around and they went back on 2nd Avenue while they were accompanied by the barricade officer, which in that case would be the volunteers for Open Street. It did go well. But the resolution does explicitly point out that the signage will be there. It needs to be bigger. We've already addressed that internally. It's amazing, though, no matter what size you have, signage drivers will say they never saw anything. So, but we didn't have any issues.
Thank you, Kevin.
Sure.
All right. Marty, do you have a question?
Call the question.
All right.
Second.
Marty, seconded by Jim. All right, everybody, please go back to your digital ballot and mark your vote for 4A, and do not hit submit. For those of you who are not using the digital ballot, we will ask for your vote verbally during the second roll call. And Kevin, do you have a report while people are doing that?
I think so. I'll try to keep it brief. The committee continues to follow and realize the vision that more of the district's open and green space be open to more people. In that light, we are following two recent developments. Last week, a new city commissioner of Parks and Recreation, Sue Donahue, was appointed by the mayor. One of the first public comments Commissioner Donahue made was that the department will be committed to, quote, ensuring that parks and open spaces across New York City are accessible and welcoming for all, unquote. On this, we look forward to working with the Parks Department under its new leadership. Also, 2.5 weeks ago, Representative Maloney introduced the act called Revitalizing Cities Through Parks Enhancements, or RECIPE. This would help cities across the United States establish small gardens and parks for community access. Representative Maloney said it was an unused lot in her district that was the inspiration. We are hopeful that this can lead to more open garden and park space within our district.
All right, thank you very much, Kevin. All right, and seeing no further questions, we can move on to Health and Human Services. Elvie, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Carl. Good evening, everyone. Last January 26th, we had the third series on healthy living presentations in the community. There were 48 attendees, which was better than the first and the second series. The audience were engaged and happy to learn easy activities that seniors can do from home. There were also demands for the webinar video from people who missed the presentation. In our meeting tomorrow on Health and Human Services, we will continue to discuss whether we need to support the transfer of NYU retirees from the traditional Medicare to a Medicare Advantage plan. A res was already drafted by one of our members, but we will continue to discuss the applicability and the benefits of supporting this issue. That's all for me.
All right, Elvie, thank you. Are there any questions for the Health and Human Services Committee? All right, seeing none, thank you very much. We'll now move on to Public Safety. Matt, go ahead.
All right, so we have 3 resolutions tonight for public safety. So last month in our meeting, we basically put the question out there, you know, what are some of the key priorities for the new administration as far as quality of life, public safety, human rights. And it was a very interesting discussion, but unfortunately, it requires much more than an hour and a half's time. So what our resolution here is calling for is a task force to really kind of dig deeper. One of the key discoveries was there's not a lot of collaboration across city and state agencies, as you might expect. So we're really trying to unravel the mess and ensure safety there. So any questions on resolution 6A?
And if there are no questions, please make a call to question.
Call to question.
All right, a call to question by Anton B.
Second.
Seconded by B. All right, so everybody please go back to your digital ballot and mark your vote for 6A. And for those of you who are not using the digital ballot, we'll ask for your vote verbally during the second roll call.
And thanks to Lou for writing resolution 6A, much appreciated.
All right, let's go to 6B.
All right, so resolution 6B and C both deal with parole reform. A couple of different bills. We had some different guest speakers in November, and we continued our discussion last month. So the first bill deals with people age 55 and older. Are there any questions?
John, go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question. I noticed you had the committee vote on 6A, but not on 6B. You didn't record the committee's vote on 6B and 6C. Could you just let us know what the committee's vote was on that?
Yeah, that's see here. Yep, thanks for pointing that out. I believe, I don't recall the
resolution was split into two, Matt.
yes, but as far as the committee vote, so just so everybody's clear, what we did is we split, we took a vote, but we then split the resolutions into two, because we didn't want to assume that that you would want to vote for both the same way for both bills, because they are speaking to different things. So we split them into two. Brendan, do you happen to have the vote? I know there were a couple of abstentions.
Sorry, I didn't mean to hold things up. I just wanted to know.
That's okay.
Just a moment.
All right, we'll pull that. Does anyone have any other questions, or do we want to call all of us?
B, go ahead.
I'll call the question on the first one,
On 6B.
6B.
All right, Jim?
Just on both of these, first of all, I don't believe that anyone that kills a police officer should be given parole under any circumstances. I think it should be life imprisonment without possibility of parole. Second, when we say we are going to release anybody that's been in prison for more than 15 years and over the age of 55, realize or recognize that a good number of those will end up at the 30th Street Men's Shelter, where we've had a number of parolees and we don't know how many. The only ones we're aware of are sex offenders. So I'm voting against both of these resolutions. I know they're well intended, but I know that the community is largely opposed to these kind of decarceration efforts.
Okay, noted. Thank you, Jim. So there
Also
was
just,
oh,
sorry
go
to
ahead.
interrupt, but just to answer a question, the vote on the parole reform resolution from the committee was 4 in favor, nobody opposed, and 2 abstentions. The vote count was not included because, as Matt said, the resolution was split into 2, and we didn't want to assume that, you know, the committee would have voted that way if it were split into 2.
All right, thank you, Brendan. So there was a call to question by B. Brian, you have your hand up?
I just want to speak to the statement of that any sort of decarceration bill is unpopular in the community, and you know, that seems like it's painting a broad brush. I don't see any data or any proof that that isn't the case, and we have a ton of social problems as a result of us failing to provide social services, but constantly funding bigger and bigger jails for a extremely broad range of crimes and social issues. You know, there are some salient points about people who commit murder or who murder first responders and or public workers. You know, we do need to kind of think what policy we can have to best protect those people. But you know, it's not to say that it's unpopular to fund compassionate release programs or anything like that. There has been a lot of discussion about it. It is controversial, but not unpopular, based solely on a read of what's going on in the news. If anybody on the board has any sort of data showing that the community is largely opposed to these efforts, then I would be willing to consider it. But at this moment, I have to believe that that is simply not a data point that we can consider because we have no proof of it.
All right, thank you, Brian. B, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I don't know if I could talk to the question because I called the question. So I asked you, Carl, because I have a comment to make about the resolution.
It hasn't been seconded, so.
Okay, so I want to point out that this is to give people a parole hearing on which the facts would be determined. I think if you look at the statistics in this resolution, you know, over age 55, it's 4%. over 65, it's less than, it's near zero. And I think the issue that was addressed is society has to provide rehabilitation, social counseling, and all the other stuff. But this gives the opportunity for a parole hearing. That's why I support it.
All right, thank you very much, B. All right, and Jim, you already made your point, so
I wanted to respond somewhat to.
Well, Jim, I don't want to get
right.
into committee business. I
right.
appreciate it. I understand, but I already gave your say. Marty, your hand up.
I I second the to call the question
All right, thank you.
on number one, A.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so everybody please go to your digital ballot and mark your vote for 6B and do not hit submit. And for those of you who are not using the digital ballot, we will ask for your vote verbally during the second roll call. All right. And Matt, do you want to talk about 6C?
Yep, so 6C is a little different, but it speaks to some new conditions for parole hearings.
All right. Marty, do you have a question about 6C?
Yeah. While I voted in favor for 6B, 6C gives the parole unless 6B enables someone to have a hearing. There's too many paperwork screw ups that if somebody is given the parole without a hearing, but he's out there. Somebody who's been incarcerated should stay there until such time as they finished their sentence, had reduced sentence due to good behavior, or a parole board has given them the okay to leave. So I vote opposed to this part. And I agree with you, Jim. First-degree murder, killing of a police officer should not enable a person to have a parole or even a hearing.
All right, thank you, Marty. Are there any other questions or comments on 6C? B, go ahead.
So I have just a clarification of what Brendan said. When he gave us the vote, I assume with what he was just said that the vote wasn't taken on the on C. Am I correct? Or was it taken separately on B and C?
The vote was taken on a resolution with both Senate bills, B and C, combined into one resolution. So the vote, how I mentioned earlier, was based on a resolution with those two Senate bills combined into one resolution, as opposed to two separate resolutions.
So Karl, I have a technical question, whether or not that really passed the committee.
So just to jump in here, so we discussed the matter with Jesus and Brendan, and we were given the advice that we did not need to reconvene a committee meeting for a separate vote since both resolutions were in favor.
So you're saying both of this was in one that was voted on?
Yeah, but because of the language in the second bill, I did not want to bundle them for the sake of the full board. That I wanted to have two separate resolutions in case anybody had felt one way about one bill but felt differently about the others. I didn't want to force the board to have a bundled vote.
B, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I think, that's why you really needed two separate votes, because I don't know if the language was the same. I don't know how it's different. And the third one is the more controversial. So it really raised this question in my mind, whether I support the idea or not, but I am questioning the process.
Yeah, nothing changed in the language. The committee voted the same way, and then we just split it into a separate resolution. But the language and the intent is still the same.
Okay. And do you have a similar thing?
Yeah, very similar. And I feel like honestly, had the vote in committee been on two different things, you might have gotten different votes. I'm a little like uncomfortable about this, and I feel like honestly, no offense to the board office, but isn't this exactly what like the parliamentarian is like the question that the parliamentarian is supposed to answer? Marty, is that you? Like, I'm not sure who our parliamentarian is.
The current chair did not appoint me as parliamentarian. The prior
So
chair had.
anyway, if this is not timely, I hate to do this, but you know, maybe it should come back next month with a vote on the two. And you know, Matt, now you've heard some of the concerns. If there's, if there's ways that you can adjust them that might, address those concerns.
So again, I would point out that we had two committee discussions on this. It was on the agenda in November and again in January. And we had the same small group of people. So I don't see any further need for discussion here. It's a simple case of the full board not paying attention to committee agendas and then wanting to opine once it reaches and tear apart resolutions once it reaches the board. We've been down this road before.
All right, Sandro, I see your hand up.
Matt, I respectfully disagree. I think the point here is not that the board is necessarily trying to tear apart a resolution, just that this resolution actually has not been adopted by the committee in its current form. I understand that there was parts of it that were in a previous resolution. The normal format that we follow is that a committee will adopt a resolution for the purpose of recommending that be adopted by the entire board. And that has not happened in this case. And I think that process failure is what's causing a lot of consternation here for those who might even be supportive of the bill.
Yeah, understood on the procedural part of it. But I mean, in this case, where we were following the advice given by the district office, by the board office.
So let me chime in on that. Give a little bit of nuance. We gave a few suggestions because we also saw this as a very unorthodox way to proceed. The above the board proper way to do it would have been to call another meeting, albeit a short one. We've done that before. The committee has done that before, either before the date of full board or right before full board. There was I think the committee had suggested maybe doing caucusing. That's not really a thing parliamentarily, even though the board has done it before, even less so now that everyone's on Zoom. Or that a motion could be made from the floor at full board to adopt this thing as a resolution. But those, we advised that those might be very disruptive, and this was coming fairly late in the game, so pulling together a meeting with not very much notice wasn't going to be very practical. Understanding the situation that Matt relayed, that this essentially was a resolution where both of these bills would be mentioned, and essentially they were just pulling them apart almost as a formatting issue, so that instead of just one resolution where both would have to be voted on at once, one can pick and choose. We said, okay, go ahead, split them apart. This is not the ideal way to do it. That is what the office advised. But obviously the board can decide to do whatever it chooses.
All right, we can view this as a introduction from the floor, but before we do that, let's look at Brian. You have a comment?
So my general concern is that unless the bylaws bind us from doing so, the way that we can look at this is that the committee approved a measure that included both items of business because they are referring to discrete pieces of legislation in the legislature. As it is being presented to us, it is the discrete items that were approved at committee being packaged in separate resolutions, but essentially adding up to the same item. There is no apparent issue with severing the recommendations from one another. They can be considered individually if we needed to. Should we decide to send this back to committee for reformatting because they weren't presented at committee in separate resolutions, one would have to assume that unless something changed in the state of the world between now and the next committee meeting, that both resolutions would just pass with the same margins and end up right back here at the board, which would be an entirely tedious process. I will vote on whatever I'm given a chance to vote on, but I don't see a problem with us voting on these two separate resolutions. I don't think what the committee voted on was different from what we're giving an opportunity to vote on tonight. And I think it was not ideal, but it was appropriate for us to be able to consider these pieces of legislation as separate resolutions once they pass the committee.
All right, thank you, Brian. And then Jim.
Yeah, Matt, I appreciate your work on this and understand that I serve on two committees in the full board, and I also serve on the separate account. I can't make all these meetings, and when something like this comes up, yes, I admit I missed it, but I would suggest that given that there are people here expressing a different view with respect to the third resolution and the second resolution and the first resolution, that perhaps we refer this matter back to the committee, and that you reintroduce it in the fashion that has been proposed and that has been committee or board process since inception. And I so move referral.
All right, got a couple more hands up. Marty, go ahead.
As it does seem, this specific resolution was not passed by the committee. It can be brought up by anyone in new business. So if we just adjourn it for several minutes till we get to the new business portion, it could be brought up again and voted by the board. And it would be proper.
Right, so that's how I'm kind of viewing this, Marty, too, if we want to view it as like being introduced from the floor and voting on it in that way. Very similar. Jesus, can you correct me if I'm wrong? Is there a difference between doing it in new business and doing it during the committee section? Introducing it from the floor?
Doing it in new business would be the more proper way to do it.
Okay. Okay, Dan?
Yeah, I second Jim's motion. I think it's apropos for what we should be doing right now.
All right, let me just, Rich had, I think, a question. Rich?
I'll get out of the middle of this.
Yeah, excuse me? Okay, so no comment. All right, so there was a motion that was seconded. Jim, what was your motion? Can you just repeat it?
To refer this back to committee.
Okay, that was seconded by Dan. There is an opportunity to reintroduce this during new business, but we do have to take a vote on this motion to refer back to committee. So Jesus.
Chair, I think, Mr. Chair, I think if the intent by those proposing it is to defer this to later, we would want to table this and not refer back to committee.
Well, tabling and referring are two different things. Referring, it comes right off the table. Taking it off the table is a different affair.
I'm aware of that, Jim, which is why I said that.
What
So you
Sandra,
want to table it? I don't want to table it.
what Sandra was saying is that if this vote to refer it back to committee succeeds, it would be inappropriate to then bring it back up in new business, which he's correct. So knowing that, and we don't have a slot for this in the ballot, so this vote will have to be either roll call or it will have to be by hands, by Zoom hands, which is probably, more practical. So this motion to refer 6C back to committee, if you are in favor, you should raise your Zoom hand right now, and then the office will count.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, I would like to discuss the motion before us.
Yes.
Shouldn't they
Hold
both
up.
go back?
And I called on Sandra.
Yeah, I was just going to say I would recommend that all those who are interested in voting on this tonight actually vote against the motion before us to refer back to committee so that we can introduce a motion immediately thereafter to table so that we can adjourn this to a later portion of the meeting.
I agree, Sandra. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Jesus, could you read
On
that?
order?
Okay, Jim.
Kyle, if you're going to participate in the debate, you have to step out of the chair. And
all right. Thank you, Jim.
All right.
Okay, so what we were going to do is we're going to take a vote by Zoom hand. If you are in favor of referring this back to committee, which would mean that it would not be appropriate to bring this up in new business tonight and vote on it tonight, you will raise your hand right now to show that you're in favor. And we'll give a few seconds for people to do that. The hands seem to have stopped
Chair,
coming.
restate the motion that's under consideration, please.
The motion that is under consideration is to refer 6C back to committee, which would mean that it would not be appropriate to bring it back up in new business in a few minutes. All right, so since the hands seem to have stopped coming, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, one of the hands moved. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hands. Last call for in favor, referring this back to committee.
I see 6 hands now.
Okay, we're back to 6 hands. Okay. All right, so office, do you see, Kyle saw the same 6 hands, so that's 6 in favor. We should probably vote the other way as well, just to be.
I don't think that's necessary.
Everyone opposed to this, please raise your Zoom hand. Opposed to referring this back to committee. All right, there are a lot more hands, so we're gonna just give a few more seconds for people to put their Zoom hands up and then we can start counting. All right, let's start counting.
I see 27, which is a majority of members.
I also see 27.
Okay, 27. All right, this is a procedural matter, so we won't do abstentions or not entitled. Okay, so we've got the motion failing. So that motion has been dispensed with.
All right.
Mr. Chair, I move that we table 6C.
Recognize.
Second.
All right. Sandro set the table. That was seconded by, I believe, B.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. All right, Matt, do you have a report?
Just to remind everybody that Our committee meeting next week will be a conversation with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office on their philosophy. I know there's a lot of updates, a lot of news headlines on that. So if you are interested, please join us a week from tomorrow.
All right. Thank you very much, Matt. And we'll now move on to the bylaws committee.
Point of order.
Oh, go ahead. Who's that? Is that?
You can't table a resolution just by first and second. We have to have a vote of the board.
All right. Jesus, let's do this again.
Okay.
Let's do a hand.
All right. Motion to table 6C has been seconded. Those in favor of tabling, raise your Zoom hand. We'll give a few seconds for folks to get their hands in. All right, let's begin counting. Office.
I count 27.
I do as well.
Okay. All right, if you could all put your hands down. All right, all hands down, please. All right, office, can you help me lower the hands? Okay. All right, raise your Zoom hand if you are opposed to tabling this resolution. All right, a few more seconds for the hands to come in. All right, let's count. There are 9 hands.
See 9 too.
Same.
All right, this resolution is tabled.
All right. Thank you, Jesus. All right. So we'll now move on to the next committee. We'll move on to the bylaws committee.
So thank you, Karl, and thanks to everyone for an interesting subject to look at the bylaws when we review. So let me just comment that we had our organizing meeting on January 31st. There are 14 articles in the bylaws. We organized so that each of the committee members has a number of the articles that they will report on as we start to go through. Our meetings will be held on the first Wednesday of every month, except for March, which will be the first Thursday. We did have an opportunity to go through the executive committee recommendations that Karl had asked for. And as a matter of fact, Rick had provided a number of recommendations to the executive committee. So I feel that in essence, his voice is being shared to the bylaws committee. In discussions by the bylaws committee, we decided that it would be important for the rest of the board to, as they observed things and looked at the bylaws, to make recommendations for change or to raise comments. After this meeting, you will all be receiving an air table. And I ask you that to please indicate on the air table the section that you have a recommendation about and what it is. We're going to keep the air table open for about 10 days. And as we work through them, we will incorporate not just looking at the executive committee, but all members of the board as to suggestions or questions. So at this point, I'm looking forward to it. Words do matter, as you saw today. And I think we will miss Rick for his diligence on something like this, but I think everyone is committed to taking our time and going through this. Thanks, Carl. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Thank you, B. Yeah, are there any questions for being the bylaws committee? All right, please do review the link that was included in the chat and provide your feedback so that the bylaws committee has the input of everybody. All right, thank you so much, B. I'm not seeing any questions for you.
Thank you.
And so now we'll move on to business affairs and licensing.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. We had a few folks show up to our January meeting, and I would welcome any questions or motions to these.
Any motion to bundle? Lou?
I'm curious as to why there's an objection to the MDO Development Corporation Water Club on East 30th Street.
So it says in the resolution, but they did not show up. We called them in because as a committee and hearing from other board members, there were some questions about their current operations, and we invited them to join and they didn't. So we as a committee discussed and came to the conclusion that we should object the renewal.
Thank the chair for her report.
Thanks, Lou.
Eric, your hand is up.
Yeah, I did have a quick question about the water club. If there was any research that had been done on whether they're actually in operation. It seems like they occupy huge public space right on the river, huge parking lot, as we know, connected to issues with the heliport. It seems like their hours are maybe, I don't know, 1 or 2 nights a week at most. So I just don't understand what's happening there. When I walk by, it's always empty and no activity. So just, from the community board's perspective, it's just curious what the status of that establishment is that has such a prominent place in the neighborhood and waterfront land.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. That was like a big question that the committee had, and we were hoping that they would join us and be able to offer up answers to questions exactly like you expressed, but there wasn't anyone who showed up and no communication from them about why, and it's unclear if those questions will ever be answered. But yeah, B?
I was going to recommend we bundle.
All right, there's a motion to bundle. Is that seconded?
Second.
Seconded by Lou. All right, and is there a call to question?
Call the question.
Oh, John motioned. Anne, are you seconding that?
Sure.
All right, thank you. So everybody, please go back to your digital ballot and mark your votes for 8A through 8E. And once you have completed that, please still do not hit submit. And those of you who are not using the digital ballot, we will ask for your vote verbally during the second roll call. And Claire, do you have a report while people are filling out their votes?
I just want to say that we did end our night having a discussion led by Anton, who graciously led the discussion because I work for DOT, which is one of the agencies that oversees open dining, but we have started a conversation as a committee on that. And I think we're going to continue the conversation next week. And there are some other boards out there who have written resolutions. So hopefully we can come together and think about what that might look like coming from our board. And I would encourage anyone who has ideas or thoughts to join that meeting, especially in an effort to avoid discussing committee business during our next full board meeting. But please join us. Thanks again, Anton. And I think that's all I have for tonight.
All right. Thank you very much, Claire. Seeing no further questions, we can move on to budget and governmental affairs. Reshma.
Thank you, Kyle. So we have a resolution in support of Senate Bill S-808 and Assembly Bill A-2244. It's a resolution in support of these two bills, which would end New York's sub-minimum wage for tip workers. There are about 200,000 tip workers in New York that are subject to this minimum wage that is $4 to $5.50 less than that of non-tip workers. And they had been excluded from the executive order that had been passed in 2019 by the governor of the state of New York. And tip workers are more likely than non-tip workers to live in poverty and face multiple economic hardships. And we saw this was magnified during the pandemic. And in addition to exacerbating income inequality, the sub-minimum wage also creates an increased risk of sexual harassment from customers and management, as many of these people are women and people of color. If anyone has any questions about the bill.
All right, a question from Jim.
Yeah, I wanted to speak to the bill. When I tried to sign on earlier during the public session, I was actually hoping to speak for my friend Tony Herbert, who has an alliance of minority-owned businesses, restaurants, nightlife, nightclubs, what have you. I think imposing this bill after 2 years of closings will cripple the small independent restaurants that are the fabric of New York City. A survey of restaurants, and this was a national survey, granted, but a survey of restaurateurs showed that 84% would cut staff and or hours, 75% would cut worker benefits, 98% would raise prices and or reduce the quality of their food, and 65% would adopt technology like apps or tablets to reduce staff. I had this experience this weekend at a restaurant downtown in Chinatown, where you scan an app and you order your menu item, and then it's brought to you by the same staff that busses your tables. So there's no waiters involved. I think the one fair wage advocates who are supporting this bill tried to run this kind of utopian notion that will have a high minimum wage plus tips. And that restaurant was called Colors. And it was created by the people who had been working at Windows on the World. It opened, it closed, it reopened, and it closed again. And there was all kinds of lawsuits and employees who were not paid and who ended up suing, were paid late. All kinds of troubles with it. There's an old saying that says, if wishes and dreams were cookies and cream, we'd all have dessert every evening. This is an attempt, and granted, I share the notion that that workers are underpaid in the restaurant business, but I would rather have them working, and I would rather have the restaurateur, many of whom are small and minority, middle income, or lower, having their business and making profits and keeping their doors open, than adopt this utopian notion, close the doors, fire the workers, or get rid of them, or reduce their hours, and lose their business. back when you may
Mark.
recollect this, back when the
I'm
Obama
gonna
administration.
cut you off there because we're now getting too deep into committee business. Is something that should have been brought up during committee, but your issues are noted for everyone on the board.
This is a mistake. It will cost tens of thousands of workers their jobs. We're already 150,000 fewer jobs in the restaurant business than we had prior to the pandemic, according to the second quarter Census Bureau results, which I sent to the office. We really need to focus on a recovery. This is a bad bill, and it's a bad time for this bill.
Right,
Thank you.
I would just like to add.
This is Ronnie. I agree.
All right, thank you, Ronnie. Just a reminder, please raise your hand if you want to make a comment, even if it is just to agree. Reshma, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like to say that there is something called the High Road Restaurants Program, in which there are about 400 restaurants in the state of New York that have signed on, and they have been paying the $15 minimum wage, and they have been thriving. And there is a lot of training involved that they're proposing to go along with this bill. I'd also like to say that Colors Restaurant, which was started by people from Windows of the World, which was a restaurant that had been on top of the World Trade Center, did exist for many years, and there were lots of management issues. It wasn't necessarily the $15 minimum wage that caused the problems. And I won't take up people's time here, but happy to share more information about that. Brian has his hand raised.
Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, what was the committee vote on this again? I know I was there. I'm sorry I can't get it up right now because I'm participating on a phone. But what was the vote on the committee for approval?
5 in favor, 1 against.
Okay, thank you.
And Brian, thank you for writing this resolution.
All right, thank you. Is there a call to question? Anne?
Call to question.
B?
Second.
Thank you. All right, everybody, please go back to your digital ballot and mark your vote for 9A. And
Mr.
please.
Chair.
Oh, yes, Claude?
I have a point of information.
Yep.
We voted to table 6C.
Correct.
How do we show that on the ballot?
So since you're talking about the actual tabling or the actual voting of 6C?
No, the actual voting. We have to vote on all of the items to submit.
So yes, so I was just gonna say, don't hit submit yet after you mark your vote for 9A. Jesus has the vote for the actual procedural vote.
Yes, if you're asking about what the vote count was for the procedural vote, we did note that down. If you're asking about whether this resolution is going to be called back up tonight, I guess we'll see in new business, in which case leave that spot blank because you may still need it.
Yes, so do not hit submit after you mark your vote for 9A. Please keep your ballot open. Okay, and is there a report, Reshma? While people are voting on 9A?
So, usually in January, we get feedback on our budget requests from OMB. We haven't gotten that yet, but as soon as we do have it, hopefully for our March meeting, we will comment on it, and I will be speaking to all the committee chairs and getting the process started for our submission for next year, so if people can start thinking about what they would want on those budget requests. That would be great.
All right, thank you, Reshma. And seeing no further questions, we'll move on to the next committee, Land Use and Waterfront. Kavitha will be speaking tonight. Do we have Kavitha? Yes. We're having technical issues. Kavitha, I think we're having technical issues. Okay. So I'm not hearing anything. Kavitha, maybe,
Maybe we can go move on to new business.
yeah, we'll do that. All right, so we've now reached old or new business. So board members, if you have any or old new business to state, please raise your hand through Zoom. Sandra?
Mr. Chair, I would like to have the body consider a resolution regarding Senate Bill S7514 that was discussed earlier in the meeting.
Okay, well recognized. And Brian? No.
Yes, I'd like to second that.
All right, thank you.
Call the
Right.
question. It's not debatable. To take it off the table, it's not debatable.
All right, so can we get 60 up?
A show of Zoom hands to take from the table resolution 6C. If you are in favor of taking from the table and reconsidering resolution 6C, please raise your Zoom hand.
Can you repeat that, Jesus? Because you kind of went out a little bit.
My apologies. This is a vote to take from the table resolution 6C. This is not the vote on the resolution. This is just the vote, a procedural vote to take from the table a resolution that was tabled earlier this evening. Those who are in favor of taking this from the table are raising their Zoom hands right now. "27 Zoom hands is what I see.
I see that too.
Yeah.
Okay, those who are opposed to taking from the table, please everyone lower your hands. All right. All those who are opposed to taking from the table resolution 6C, meaning you don't want to consider it further tonight, please raise your Zoom hand. A few more seconds to get anyone who may need to raise their Zoom hand. Okay, looks like just 3. Okay, with 27 in favor, 3 against, this resolution 6C is taken from the table for reconsideration.
All right, thank you, Jesus. All right, so does everyone have 6C at hand? Has everyone reviewed it? Is it possible to actually get up onto the screen, the resolution?
Yes, Brendan or Alex can.
Yes, I will share the resolution on screen in just a moment.
Thank you. And Marty, I saw a hand up.
Yes, I move that we reconsider the resolution that was propagated as 6C.
Okay, thank you. And Brian?
I second that.
All right, thank you. Okay, so very similar to before, we have received this resolution ahead of time. Are there any questions or comments on this resolution? Anne, I see your hand up.
Just a call to question.
All right, there's a call to question. Is that seconded? Marty?
Seconded.
Second.
Okay, seconded by Marty. So let's please go back to our digital ballot and mark your vote as 6C. So please scroll back up to section 6 and mark your vote for this new business resolution as 6C.
6B.
C. C as in cat. All right, and once you have completed your vote on 6C, again, C as in Charles, you can hit submit. All right, and while people are submitting, I will ask again if there's any other old or new business. Okay, seeing none, we'll now move on to the second roll call. So Matt, go ahead.
Thank you, Kyle. I'll be calling it reverse order. Claude Winfield.
Present.
Hey, Frank, where you at, buddy? Ronnie White.
Present.
Maura Wong.
Present.
Brian Van Nieuwenhoven.
Present.
Corinne Van der Donk.
Present.
Mark Thompson.
Present.
Anju Suresh.
Present.
Thank you. Susan Steinberg.
Present.
Letty Simon. Okay. Sandro Sharad.
Present.
Sean Sherman. Sean. Okay. Seema Shah. Seema. Lou Sapersky. Apologize for
Sorry,
my children.
so sorry. This is Seema. I'm here. Just couldn't get myself off mute. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. I have it. Thank you. Lou Sapersky. Lou? All right, must have lost Lou. Ann Seligman? Ann?
Present.
Who appears to be muted?
Okay, so I'll mark Lou.
Present. No, I'm here. I don't know why I wasn't.
I got it. Thank you. Lauren Scher?
Present.
Gene Santoro? Gene? Matt Roberts?
I'm here.
Reshma Patel?
Present.
Stephen O?
Present.
Kevin O'Keefe?
Present.
Rajesh Nayar? Phil Napolitano? Richard Mintz?
Present.
Sandra McKee?
Present.
Kavitha Matthew? You may not be able to answer me, but if anyone sees her, just let me know. I've marked her present. Anton Malner?
Present.
Sandra Leftoff?
Present.
Abigail Cruzmark? Abigail?
Present. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you. John Keller?
Present.
Paige Judge?
Present.
Molly Hollister?
Here.
Adam Harkey? Eric Goldberg?
Present.
Andrew Gross? Andrew, okay. Wait for a second. Charles Fernandez?
Present.
Jeannie D'Onofrio, was Jeannie able to make it? Okay. B. Dishman,
Present.
Daniel Devine,
Present.
Michael Devereaux,
Present.
Stuart Dessa,
Present.
Jim Collins,
Here.
Claire Brennan.
Present.
Thank you. Elvie Barroso,
Present.
Marty Barrett,
Present.
Neil Barkley,
Present.
Asia Badi, Kyla Thide.
Present.
Okay, so that completes the second roll call. I don't know if it's necessary for me to read the number, but there were 39 people who announced that they were present.
It looks like a couple of ballots are still not submitted. Jim Collins, your ballot needs to be submitted.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think there was one more. Oh, nope, it's coming. We're just awaiting Jim Collins's.
I can't find the thing on here. Can you put the link again in chat?
It's again in the chat.
I'm just having technical issues. I'll send it in separately if you prefer. I don't want to hold anybody up.
It has to be submitted or else we got to move on. Not consider it. Or we can take your vote orally if you prefer.
That may be necessary. I had it up here. I had it all completed, but I don't see it on my toolbar.
All right, give me 1 second.
Oh, wait. Here it is. Airtable. Okay, I have it again, but I'm gonna need to fill it out again. And I apologize. I don't know what happened to it. It's not taking the vote.
I think we should do this verbally then, just take time, unless you don't want your votes to be recorded for this meeting.
All right, we'll just take it verbally. Transportation Resolution 1A. Jim, how do you vote?
That was in favor.
Okay. Housing and Homelessness Resolution 2A. How do you vote?
In favor.
Environment and Parks Resolution. How do you vote?
In favor.
Public Safety Resolution 6A. How do you vote?
Opposed.
Public Safety Resolution.
Opposed.
Public Safety Resolution 6C.
Opposed.
Business Affairs and Licensing Resolutions, which were bundled.
All of those are affirmative.
Okay.
And 9A is opposed. Okay, I'm sorry for the inconvenience. I honestly don't know what happened to that Airtable piece.
No worries. Okay, now all ballots are in, and Matt Bondi, you may call the votes whenever you're ready.
Okay, great, thank you. So for transportation, resolution 1A, 41 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions, no not entitled. Resolution 2A, 39 in favor, 2 opposed, no abstentions, no non-entitles. Parks 4A, 37 in favor, 2 abstentions, 2 not entitled. Public Safety 6A, 37 in favor, 4 opposed, no abstentions, no not entitled. Public Safety 6B, 30 in favor, 8 opposed, 3 abstentions, no not entitles. Public Safety 6C, 26 in favor, 10 opposed, and 5 abstentions, no non-entitles. Resolution 8A, 41 in favor, no opposed, no abstentions, no not entitled. Resolution 8B, 41 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions, no not entitled. Resolution 8C, 41 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions, no not entitled. Resolution 8D, 41 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions, no not entitled. Resolution 8E, 38 in favor, 0 opposed, 3 abstentions, no not entitled. Resolution 9A, 32 in favor, 4 opposed, 4 abstentions, and 1 not entitled. And that concludes the vote count. All of the resolutions carried.
All right, thank you very much. All right, if there are no objections, we will adjourn the meeting. And seeing no.
Mr. Chair,
Oh, yes.
I was having trouble with my program, so I want to be sure I'm recorded as answering the second roll call.
Okay, we'll make sure that you're included on that.
And for the record, I just submitted the error table just for your records.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
And another point, Kavitha was also here. She was just having some tech issues, so we'll mark her as present for the second roll call as well. All right, so seeing no further business, I'm adjourning the meeting at 9:15 p.m. Thank you, everybody.
Have a good night.
See you on
Good night, everyone. Take care.
Good night.